Welcome to Hospitality Connection, the podcast where we bring together hospitality experts, innovators, and leaders to share insights, strategies, and stories from the world of hotels, restaurants, and beyond. Each week, Scott Samuels and Alex Gould, your hosts, dive into the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities in hospitality, giving you practical insights and inspiration to thrive in today's industry. Let's connect, learn, and grow together. This is Hospitality Connection.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for 6 months of the Hospitality Connection. Now, this isn't a recap episode. Instead, we wanted to hit pause halfway through the year and talk about what we've been hearing over and over again from the incredible leaders who've joined us on the show. We've talked to operators, HR executives, ownership groups, recruiters, and hospitality leaders across every segment of the industry. Now, certain themes just kept resurfacing. Today, we're sharing what surprised us, what's changing, and where we think hospitality is headed over the next 6 months. Now, Scott, I think leadership in itself just feels different now. It's a lot more people-focused. Leaders that we've spoken to spend a lot more time developing and then managing. What are you seeing? What are people talking to you about?
Yeah, it's really shifted to company culture is key right now. We want leaders that could fit into our culture. And it's always interesting to hear the perception and the description of a culture from a senior leader and then see if it translates to the line staff. Because, culture should be, the vision of culture and the mission can be shared with them, but are they really living it? Right. And culture isn't, they're not supposed to be words. They're supposed to be what people live on a day-to-day basis. So are they making decisions based on the culture and treating people as the culture says? But I feel like in most companies these days, it's dictated from the top down and it's really not being embraced by the line staff. And so as much as you want to talk about what a great culture, what type of culture you have, I think, analyzing, is that really holding true when you talk to the people that are in operations day to day? And if it is, great. But I think that's sort of the disconnect that we have today, is that the culture piece is not being embraced by the entire team. So that's one of the biggest things people are looking for, candidates, employees who fit into their culture. And yet, when you talk to the line employees, they really can't even describe the culture. So
I think that starts, though, at the beginning of that candidate experience and journey, right? Right when they're interviewing, what are they being told? What's that timeline? Who are they meeting with? Are they being given those pieces of homework to study on who they're speaking with? Allow them to make that choice on their own. I don't necessarily think it should be a surprise about, that the cadence of their interview process, how long each step should take, what the compensation should be. And I think that is what really drives culture from a candidate perspective. It gives them insight of who this company is and tells the candidate, this is where I can go when I'm working with this company. So I think keeping those things close to the chest is an outdated system. Allow people in, let them know what's happening behind the curtains and share with them a little bit more about what their experience is going to be like, because they're going to remember this, right? They're going to talk to their friends, and there's so many resources out there and platforms out there for them to share that experience, right? There's Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn, all of these platforms that allow people to share what they've gone through. And if you're not providing the right tools to these candidates, even though they're not necessarily an employee yet, that's still your employee brand, your employer brand rather, that's being exposed.
Yeah, and that's just it, Alex, is when you're talking to candidates, they could be future customers. And I don't think employers know that. And so you want to make sure you're always leaving them with a positive experience, whether they get the job or not. It's important that they feel like they've been treated well. And, I think when again, we're talking about culture, a big shift has been from micromanagement to coaching, is that, now it's all about the coaching philosophy of treating people, giving them clear expectations, allowing them to perform, and then coach them along the way. And one of the biggest changes I've seen, and companies still do it, but the annual performance review has been, has gone by the wayside. When 10 years ago, the big things were, let's do a 360-degree performance review where there's a peer review, there's a subordinate review, and the employee reviews themselves. And then you get all these things together and provide them with what valuable feedback you can share with them. And companies struggle with this all the time because everybody evaluates performance differently, and it's very subjective when you have a tough evaluator versus, someone who's a little bit lighter. And so, performance evaluation should be a daily thing. It's coaching and developing versus, at the end of the year, we're going to sit down with you and have this review. And what do people expect? They expect an increase in that review. And I just think that philosophy is wrong. It's outdated. Companies are still doing it, but it's always a struggle, to have consistency on the reviews.
Yeah, I think leadership development and the evolution of training, coaching, as you mentioned, needs to happen on a day-to-day, right? If you have an opportunity to give feedback, if you have an opportunity to make someone better at what they're doing, take advantage of it. And it doesn't need to be a sit-down, one-on-one environment where you have an evaluation sheet. It can be a very simple, hey, listen, this is what I saw. This is where I wanted to go from here. And to your point, I don't think that's happening. And I think people are blaming time and restraints and resources. But at the end of the day, if you want your team to succeed, take every opportunity that you can to make them better. Give them the chance to reflect on what they just did and the opportunity to enhance themselves, their teams, the people around them, and ultimately that guest experience that we're all striving for.
And employee retention begins day one in the onboarding process. And so, to us, the most important thing is, whenever we place a candidate, are they being set up for success? Are they being onboarded properly, indoctrinated? Because if they aren't, that's the first impression they get of your company.
Yeah, and that doesn't stop once they're onboarded, right? That's a 30, 60, 90, 360-day evaluation.
Absolutely.
That needs to happen throughout their entire career, right? We need to be learning as employers what's being effective in our company, in our organization. Where can we make improvements? So as much as you're coaching and developing a person that's in a role, you're also learning about your organization because over time, things change. People change. Expectations change. And when you have a new candidate, I think it's wise to learn from their experiences. What have you seen in the past and previous organizations that you've worked for that worked well for them? What can we learn from you?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I would say 95% of companies, even more, don't learn from when candidates leave. There are no exit interviews, learning about why they left, when they voluntarily leave, of course. And I think those are some of the most valuable feedback that you can receive as an employer because you might not understand what's happening behind the curtain. And I think exit interviews serve a valuable purpose. But again, sometimes people are scared to hear what
challenging.
They don't want to hear it.
Very challenging to schedule an exit interview, especially in hospitality, right? Things don't happen in advance often. Maybe there's succession planning that's happened or someone putting in a notice. But typically it's, we're onboarding and offboarding very quickly. And we need to take advantage of the time that we have with people before we get to that point to learn about their experiences there. And then obviously they're going to be a little bit more open during an exit interview, right? You're going to hear things that you don't want to hear.
You usually don't get candid feedback when you as the employer, they're leaving your employee or conducting the interview. You really need a third party to conduct that so you can get candid feedback. I think a lot of people, when they leave an organization, are hesitant to say anything bad, or provide constructive feedback because they want to leave on a good note. And, having a third party doing the exit interview is a lot more valuable than trying to get that information yourself.
Yeah. Now, hiring itself has become a lot more invasive, right? It's a relationship building process now. It's not about filling a seat. It's about building rapport with your candidates. It's about learning where the struggles are and understanding who and where those candidates are coming from. Because the candidates, hate to say it, but the reality is the great candidates out there are not scrolling looking for their next opportunity. They're very, very happy and stable in the career that they're in. However, maybe they're open to a conversation, right? What's best for them personally, professionally, financially, as they move forward in their career.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest values of companies like us and our services are that, one, we're reaching out to those passive candidates who are always excited to hear from us about opportunities with our clients. But we have a relationship with them. We have established trust. And I think when the thing I've learned over the course of my 27 years in this business is that, you have to have transparency and rapport with candidates. They have to feel like that you're out for their best interests. And you should be, because, if a position is a good fit for someone, that's great. If it isn't, you need to let them know. And when candidates and job seekers feel like, it's all about getting them placed in a job, then, they can read through the lines. I mean, it's your sincerity, it's your honesty. I feel like, the passive market is being overlooked. Employers don't want, like you said, people that are on job boards every day that have, poor job tenure. And that's typically what you find when you put an ad on the internet. Yeah. And, when this business started 50, 100 years ago, recruiting started, there was no internet. There was no computer. There was nothing. There was just a phone.
You're etching on stone.
And paper resumes, right? And so, how do you recruit talent? You pick up the phone. You find out who the competitors are of the companies that you're recruiting for. You give them a call. You give them a great, compassionate, reason that they should consider this other company. And then you talk to them about what their needs are and how they could possibly fit into it. And, people, as these days, especially in either candidates or clients, I mean, there's so many filtering points right now that prevent the actual conversation from happening. It's become so impersonal, with the cell phone and texting. But, in order to establish rapport, you have to have that voice conversation.
And there has to be a cadence to it as well, right? You need to have a timeliness factor when it comes to interviewing throughout your hiring process. If you go out and make outreach to a great passive candidate, and you're slowing the process because you want to see comparables, that's going to hinder the perception of this candidate and your company. They're going to say, oh, am I not the right fit? I thought we had this great conversation. I thought I was moving forward in process, and then crickets for weeks. I think speed matters now more than ever. And if you take your time and take those long breaks in between, candidates are going to lose interest. They're not going to be excited about the role. They're going to use their voice in their circle, in their network, to tell people about their experience. And that employer brand matters. It matters a lot.
Candidates are going to lose interest, but more importantly, they're going to lose trust. They're going to lose trust in you as the recruiter. They're going to lose trust in this prospective employer. And, it's hard to earn that trust back. So, you're absolutely right. The continual communication and feedback is critically important to be successful, and to make sure that you're satisfying your clients' needs too.
Yeah, and I can't push this point enough, but if you're an employer and you don't think that every touch point in an interview matters, it does. It's a reflection on your company. It's a reflection on how you work inside that company once someone is onboarded, right? Imagine being prompted by a recruiter. You get your first interview and then silence. And then there's no communication. That's not a great perception of what your company should be. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to showcase your greatness, right? We have this open position. This is why. This is what we offer. Let's tell you about who you're meeting with next. Let's share the process with you a little bit further. I can tell countless times where we have gotten critical searches, right? Very business critical searches, time sensitive, that pushing us to get this process started. We go out, we ignite the search, and then what? And then it goes silent. Or they want more comparables. Let me tell you, there's no such thing as the perfect candidate. If you have a bird in the hand, shut your hand, take that candidate, and make an offer. I know you want to see comparables. I know it's exciting, but you're going to lose someone great if you have that. I mean, you must see this in the 27 years.
We've been, obviously, I think that there's a lot of merit in what you just said, because it's almost like, olive oil, the best press is the first press in, and that's where you get your extra virgin olive oil. So same thing with candidates is that when we begin a search, typically the best grouping of candidates are going to come from that initial lot. And a lot of companies say we want to see more. We want to see more, and that's okay if obviously these candidates don't fit the bill for what the client's looking for. But again, you have to be respectful of the candidates that are in process, or you're going to lose them, because really good candidates have multiple options.
And there's no issue with telling them what's happening. Hey, listen, we had a great interview with you. We have a few more that we're going to get through over the next 10 days. We'll be in touch with next steps shortly. Here's likely who you're going to be speaking with. Now, it's on the candidate for them to do the homework or not, right? That shows their readiness and how prepared they are to take the next step in that journey.
And we always have that information, because on the intake call from the initial client call, we'll go through the exact steps that this process is going to go through. And so we should be able to communicate that effectively. And a lot of times it's our clients that may prolong the search because they're not able to communicate, in a timely manner to us. So, but that's just part of what we have to deal with on a daily basis.
And a little statistics here, right? 27 years, 10,000 plus placements, 91% of those placements come within the first 10 to 14 days of candidates shown to you at that point. So the math, the numbers don't lie. That's who you're going to be hiring. And it's on you to take that information and understand what you have in front of you and make a decision of whether or not this person is right for your organization or not.
And they could come to the point where you're just not comfortable with that initial group. And that's okay. As long as, providing us feedback that we can learn from and go back out and find additional candidates.
And share that feedback with the candidate.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to be transparent, especially in this relationship.
Yeah. Now, I think where we are right now, everyone knows, right, running a hospitality business in whatever sector you're in, it's not getting any easier right now. I mean, there's so many things that people have to take into account for, whether it's labor, it's tech, it's replacing people with what we do every day. There's a lot happening that is prohibitive of starting and igniting a business that's sustainable.
A lot of what I'm seeing today are that companies are continuing to make the same mistakes in their hiring process that they did, 10, 15 years ago. And when we talk about the complete search, it's so important to check all the boxes when you're conducting a search. The interview process is one box, obviously. The reference checks are critically important as part of that process. And a lot of companies, there's that myth of the reference checking is that people aren't going to tell you anything. And if you do the reference checks the right way, you're going to get so much valuable information about how people manage others, how they lead a team. But you have to ask the right questions, and you have to address the right people. We don't want personal references. You want professional references. You want prior supervisors, peers, and subordinates. And I think that's a real important part of our process is that we incorporate all those. And getting great reference checks, or whether they're good or bad, is incredibly important to making sure you avoid a costly hire.
Yeah, and I also think the way in which a candidate responds to being asked for references is golden information.
You will know immediately. I mean, if you ask for references and we send a reference check form out to candidates and you don't get that back within 24 hours and you have to keep prodding the candidate for that information, that's an immediate red flag.
Or if they're not full, right? You ask for 3 and you get 1. You ask for 5 and you get 2.
And then when the responses don't come back, and you're not able to get callbacks from the references themselves in very quickly, that's another red flag. Yeah. I mean, people want to talk about people they like, right? And people they respect. And so, again, that's just one component. But I know that companies these days are leaving out certain elements like background checks. And, background checks, criminal, DMV, critically important, again, to uncover any skeletons in the closet. And it's so cost effective these days to do and easy, but that's something that again is left off. And then we incorporate assessments into the process, and there are a lot of great assessments, whether it be competencies and behaviors or EQ. I mean, when you balance the entire search with all of those components, in addition to when you have a candidate, having them on site for a half a day to, we call it a working interview, It's just you get to see them in action. They get to see you in action. You pose it as this is an opportunity for you to see how we work. But really, it's critical because you're looking at them in the environment and, to see how they respond to things. I always used to say, if it's a restaurant GM and they're not helping clear a table or pick up a piece of paper on the floor, or they're standing back and they're not interacting with the customers or the staff, it tells you a lot. And you can't uncover that in an interview because it's like a first date, right? People put on their game face. They're going to tell you all the great things about them. But the whole goal with the interview process is to uncover things that, may be red flags so you can be confident in the person you're hiring.
Yeah.
And it's, the funniest thing about, it's not funny, but 27 years in business, we probably have 80% of the candidates that come to us have been in our database before.
Yep.
So we have to make sure that candidates are, telling the truth, about their background. And we have past resumes that we can compare to current resumes. And inevitably, there are some major differences between 2 or 3 resumes, and those give us opportunities to address that directly. And in addition to what you see on LinkedIn. So again, another value point of, us or any other good firm that does what we do is that you're checking the boxes in a lot of different areas.
Yeah. I also want to talk a little bit about what I've seen in this past year that I've been with Horizon. Now, a lot of clients are moving to a more engaged or retained style of partnership with us. And I think there's a reason for that. One, statistically, you're going to get your hire faster and you're more likely to get a placement. Contingent leans very, very heavy on volume. You're going to get resume after resume after resume. You're going to get fatigue in this process, and you're likely not going to find who you want to find. Now, I don't know if you've seen this historically, but I think clients now want a partnership. They want an extension of their HR department to take on the talent acquisition side of things, to be able to go out into the market as an extension of your brand, to speak to the culture, to speak what life is like, to talk about what it's like from the boardroom down to that line level. And you don't get that with a contingent style of service. And I think clients out there, organizations out there are leaning into this heavy.
I think so. I think it's been an evolution, and companies still want you to work for free for them. It's natural. I mean, the vast majority of firms out there right now are contingent-based firms.
I do think, though, that mentality is history repeating itself. That's what people are used to. But they should also be used to the same results when you go in that fashion of a contingent search.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is 15% of contingent searches get placed, right? So, you're going to be getting a lot of candidates being thrown, at the wall, so to speak. But you're also, and I don't think companies realize that, but, the contingency firms, take candidates to market, and then they're not just taking them to you, they're sending them to multiple firms. I just don't believe in that philosophy. I mean, to me, we've got a relationship with a company. We're not going to be sending the same candidate out to multiple companies. But when you're dealing with a 15% success rate, you almost have to do that if you want the placements.
Yeah.
And again, the engaged search, the commitment on a company's end that they're serious about, seeing candidates, and the amount of time and effort we go into finding candidates and evaluating them, it's significant. So, I agree, Alex. I think, things are shifting to the engaged model where there's a mutual commitment financially, because we're going to work our tail off on their behalf. And, we're all about getting results. But again, I think some companies are, just dipping their toes in the water. They're not really serious about, or they may have, people they're going to promote and they're not sure. And so making an investment initially, is a little tough for them. But again, if you're serious about a search, if you're serious about seeing qualified candidates and seeing passive candidates, not the ones you'll see on job boards, the engaged model makes the most sense.
I think there's a time and place for contingent, engaged, and retained search. But when you're hiring at a management level and above, and you have a critical role to fill, if you're not putting your effort into finding a candidate that fits the bill, not just on paper, but to your point, in person, you're just not going to get that quality of a search with a contingent arrangement.
And you won't get the complete search is really it. I mean, you may get candidates, but the complete search to me is the most important element, is that you're checking all the boxes, you're doing the due diligence on the candidates that you need to uncover any skeletons. And again, I think that's, to me, it's the best feeling in the world when you have that ideal candidate that fits with the client. The money comes later, right? It's not even the money piece. It's the satisfaction you get when you're matching, it's like a matchmaker. I mean, we're matchmakers, right?
Exactly. The facilitators of change within hospitality. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, what you've learned. 27 years is a long time in this space, and you've probably come across a lot of change, a lot of pushback. But as you evaluate growth and you look at Horizon, what changes do you think we're making to be more present in the space? And, personally, what have you changed your outlook on?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it has been in the past 5 years. This almost seemed like it was a transactional business before. And my mindset has changed to, this is obviously a relationship business, where you truly have to develop trust and partnerships with the clients you work with. And I know that may seem cliche, but, to me, it's not about making a placement. It's about solving a problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of times our clients come to us with problems that don't involve finding a candidate. And for us, being a solution provider that can give them tools and resources that we don't have the expertise to provide. Again, setting up someone for success in a position, making sure they actually know what they want to hire is the right position for their company is critically important. So it's being the solution provider and understanding, exactly what the needs are. And I think because, fortunately, I've been doing this as long as I have, and I've been in the business of, in operations beforehand, I think there's a intuitive nature to some of the problems because we've walked in the shoes of the companies. And so we can relate to a lot of the problems, and we'll turn down searches, all the time. If we don't feel we could be successful for them, if they're not paying enough for what they're looking for, if their expectations are unrealistic for what they're looking for, and we'll help coach them and we'll be very candid with them. And, it's not about, as I said, the transaction. It's about making sure that we're able to provide them with the solution that they really need.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm really excited about moving forward this year and as we get into next year is the growth of our hospitality advisory collective, right? So this is a group of industry adjacent hospitality firms that don't do search. Maybe they do bar consulting or restaurant consulting, culinary consulting, task force, HR, marketing, et cetera, that we put together so we don't have to say no as much. So we have now a network that's built into our ecosystem that we can lean on when the time is right. Because, saying no to a client when we know that there's a need is hard to do. And a lot of times, I know personally, I'll try to fit a square peg into a round hole and say, let's make it work. But that's probably not the best solution.
Yeah, I feel it's about making our clients, giving them the tools to be more successful. And we have a lot of tools in our toolkit right now to be able to do that. Some may apply, some may not. But, the variety within the Hospitality Advisory Collective, and the resources that we can pull from and offer now as solutions for our clients, are just going to make them better operators.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really and that's how we grow and that's how we develop stronger relationships is that, again, we're a solution provider. We're not just a one shop fits all. We want to be able to offer those different options.
And I think the benefit outside of being able to support clients outside of recruitment is the ability to scale our own network and our own business growth. Right? They're going to lean on us as much as we're leaning on them to support them when they have an opportunity that we can step in and assist with. So I'm really excited about where this is going, the growth that we've had already, the members in the Hospitality Advisory Collective so far.
And we're being very selective, right? Because the collective needs to be a representation of companies that we feel comfortable in referring to our clients, that they will take care of our clients the same way that we would. And, the reverse is true for these companies. They want to look at us as a recruiting firm and say, if we're going to refer you to one of our clients, that we know they're going to be treated, with white gloves.
Yeah.
So
and I think, what I've noticed with Horizon, and, I've been here a year, just about, is the efforts that you guys have been making to change your approach to market. It's been significant. I did my homework when we were talking. I mean, we started our conversation now 3 years ago, and I don't think at that point it was ready for someone like me to come in. But look at what you've built to date, right? You're now in a podcast studio, stepping up from the virtual sessions that we were doing, which is something you probably never thought you were doing before, building strategic partnerships and alliances with other companies in the space. And I think we're really stepping forward and stepping up our ability to serve the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've told you this many times now, is that this has re-energized me. I've been more excited about the growth of our company, after 27 years than I ever have before, because I think we're approaching it. I don't want to say we approached it the wrong way before. We did what we thought was the best.
Times change. And you have to adjust.
And I think we've evolved into what we want to be as the most highly respected recruiting firm in the hospitality industry. I don't necessarily want to be the biggest. I never wanted to be the biggest. We just want to be respected and the best. And when people come to us, they know that they're gonna receive like white glove service, but they're also going to be treated respectfully. And
I think that's a big part of business development, right? It's not about transaction. It's about showcasing what you can do systematically through a process that builds relationship and rapport. Right? You have to build a connection with our clients. We have to build a connection with our candidates, because they will be clients one day too. And I think if we're not taking that step forward and doing exactly what Horizon is doing, we would, we'd miss the boat.
Yeah, and I look at some of our competitors and their business model, and I don't think you could achieve what we're achieving now, being a franchise or a licensed, recruiting company. I think those platforms are set up for owners that want to make, money, and not really set up for taking care of the clients and companies the way they need to be. So, people ask me, what differentiates you? And I think obviously it's the people we have and the team we've built, and the tenure we have within our company is phenomenal. Very little, if any, turnover, and I think, I think it's because we built a good culture. We're open to changing and evolving. We're continually learning, which again, I think is something that early on I realized that I was within my four walls and I had to branch out to see what other firms were doing, what other mistakes were being made. And the evolution of our company, I think, has just grown significantly after that. It's just, you've got to be open and change it. And we're evolving. We'll continue to evolve. And things are changing so rapidly. I mean, AI is just one aspect that's changing our industry and everybody's industry. And what's happening today is going to be obsolete tomorrow. And so you try to plan, but again, we have a way to embrace AI, but AI also, has a certain place within recruiting, because it could become too impersonal. And this is a personal industry, especially within hospitality.
Yeah. I think it's a whole nother session that we get into.
For sure.
So now, looking ahead, what are you seeing in the market? Where do you think the next 6, 12, 18 months are going to take Horizon and the industry itself?
Well, as far as Horizon goes, in the next 6 to 12 months, I think we're going to continue to build on some of the platforms we've established. Being the brand leader, our brand is really everything to us. I mean, we believe that we want to treat people again, the evolution of candidates and clients and how we've been reviewed on Google, and those are so important to us. I mean, people evaluate us before they even talk to us because of our reviews. So, I mean, that's important, but I think it's just a general part of the process that's going to continue to grow based on making sure that we're, again, a solution provider for our clients. And that, to me, is the most exciting part of our future, is being able to solve problems that, we hadn't been before, because just not something we did,
Yeah. And I think from a tangible front, I'm I'm real pumped about where this is going. I mean, we're moving into this podcast studio. We're bringing in guests on a regular basis in person to have real in-depth conversations about what's changing in the industry, what they've done. I think it's so important to provide this kind of insight to candidates, to operators, to see what works, what doesn't work, what mistakes have other people made that we can avoid. And I know we have a nice lineup coming up in the coming months here.
Amazing group of guests, that are going to provide some incredible insight to our viewers and our listeners. I'm not even going to go through who they are. I'm just going to say, please tune in because, you'll be very pleased to hear the insights. Because how do you learn? How do you learn in this business? You learn from others that are successful. The mistakes they made, the successes they have. I mean, the whole analogy of you fail, 10 times more than you succeed is true in every industry, right? And so if you can avoid making those mistakes and listen to people who have been successful, that's the key. And so we have some great guests that are going to be able to share their success stories and failures with everybody. And I'm real excited about it.
Yep. Now, if there's one thing we've learned this year, it's that hospitality continues to evolve. But at its core, it's still all about the people. That's what makes this industry so special. And that's exactly what we'll continue exploring on Hospitality Connection. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the comments and suggestions. Thanks to the guests that make this show so great. And we're looking forward to the next months to come.
Thank you for tuning in to Hospitality Connection. We hope you found today's conversation insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and connect with us on LinkedIn and other social channels to keep the conversation going. Join us next week for more insights, stories, and strategies from the hospitality industry, because when we share knowledge, we all grow. Until then, stay connected and keep elevating hospitality.